Chinwe felt her heart sink the moment she realized she was sitting alone with tears gathering in her eyes. Across the room, an old photo album lay open, showing a picture of her wedding day. She remembered the happiness she felt back then, holding a perfect bouquet of fresh roses, convinced her life would be filled with such thoughtful gestures. Yet, day after day, the reality was different. Her husband, Tunde, saw flowers as unnecessary expenses. He dismissed them as simple decorations that died too soon. Early in their marriage, Chinwe hoped it would change. She believed if she dropped enough hints, if she circled a pretty bouquet in a magazine, or exclaimed how lovely her friend's roses were, he might surprise her. But Tunde never did. Each time she hinted, he offered a shrug or a mild laugh, never understanding how much that small gesture would mean to her. Time passed, and the disappointment settled into Chinwe's routine. She stopped daydreaming about a sudden bouquet appearing on the kitchen table, or a special arrangement greeting her at the end of a long day. A movie on television would show a husband returning home with flowers, and Chinwe would feel a tight pinch in her chest. She wanted that moment, just once, to look into Tunde's eyes and know he cared enough to buy something that, to him, served no purpose beyond making her smile. Instead of nagging, Chinwe decided to show Tunde what she longed for by giving him the very gestures she wished to receive. She remembered the excitement in his voice one day when he admired a particular wristwatch. It was something he saw in passing, a small item he casually mentioned. Though money was tight, Chinwe saved up enough to buy that watch. She left it on his side of the bed with a note, "Because I love you." Surprised, Tunde found himself touched in a way he hadn't expected. He wondered why Chinwe would go out of her way to do something so simple, yet so meaningful. That night, he held the watch with a curious expression, as though he was trying to decipher a code. He looked at Chinwe, thinking she might need something in return, but she simply smiled and went on with her evening. After that day, Chinwe continued these small acts of love. She brewed his favorite coffee before he woke up and placed it near his seat at the table. She wrote short, encouraging notes on slips of paper and tucked them into his work bag. She studied the way he smiled when he read them, understanding that it mattered to him. Though he never said it outright, she could see the change. His face grew softer each time he found a new note or returned home to a small act of kindness. Yet Chinwe still longed for flowers. She began buying them for herself, placing them on the window ledge or on the dining table. She picked out bright, cheerful daisies one week and delicate lilies the next. Sometimes she brought home simple blossoms from a roadside stall. Tunde never asked about them, but he noticed. He saw how her face lit up whenever she buried her nose in their sweet fragrance. He saw how she arranged them in vases with special care, like they were the most fragile treasures in the house. Late at night, Tunde would think about Chinwe's gestures. He wasn't cruel or cold. He simply never believed in things that faded after a few days. In his mind, flowers were an unnecessary expense. He had grown up in a home where no one made a fuss about romance or small tokens of affection. But Chinwe wasn't like that. Her eyes sparkled whenever she encountered a gesture that spoke to the heart. With every kind deed she offered him, Tunde felt a subtle shift inside himself. He wanted to do something that would mirror the warmth she gave so freely. The days rolled on, and Chinwe's birthday approached. She didn't expect gifts or a grand celebration. Over the years, Tunde's gifts, when he remembered, were always useful items: slippers, kitchen gadgets, maybe a new phone case. She appreciated those gifts, but longed for something she could hold close to her heart, something that felt purely symbolic of love. When her birthday arrived, she woke up early and tried to distract herself. She cooked breakfast and tidied the living room. Looking around, she felt a slight pang. There were no flowers on the table, no ribbons or bright balloon banners. Still, she forced a smile and reminded herself that love could show itself in many ways. Perhaps Tunde would take her to dinner. Maybe he would give her something practical she needed. She kept her hopes small, but the house was unusually quiet. She noticed Tunde was nowhere to be seen. She sat on the couch, flipping channels aimlessly, until she heard the front door open. Tunde walked in, carrying a wrapped parcel. Her heart fluttered, though she tried to remain calm. Maybe it was a new sweater or a pair of comfortable shoes. She thanked him before opening it, bracing for whatever item lay inside. Under the wrapping, she discovered a small potted plant. Her heart lifted at the sight of its vibrant green leaves and bright petals. It wasn't what she had pictured, but it was alive. She picked it up and saw a note tucked beside the pot, a few words scribbled in Tunde's barely legible handwriting. The note said, "I know it's not much, but it reminds me of your patience and how you keep things growing around here." Chinwe felt tears welling up. In that moment, she realized Tunde had, in his own way, tried to meet her halfway. He had chosen a living plant, something that wouldn't die after a few days. It was a gift that required care, just like their relationship. Though it still wasn't the bouquet she had pictured so often, the gesture touched her deeply. She set the plant on the center table and held Tunde's hand for a long, quiet moment. Days turned into weeks, and Chinwe carefully tended to the little plant. Its leaves brightened the living room, and every time she watered it, she remembered that note. Tunde noticed how lovingly she cared for it, speaking softly to the leaves as though they were part of the household. He began to see how small acts could mean the world to someone, that a simple gesture of love could open a person's heart in ways no expensive gadget ever could. Then, on a quiet evening, Chinwe fell ill. She was exhausted from a busy day at work and the stress of various responsibilities. Tunde, worried about her condition, spent the night looking up ways to make her more comfortable. He prepared a simple soup, wrapped her in blankets, and kept a close watch on her temperature. For the first time in their marriage, he recognized how her acts of love had always been about noticing details, when he was tired, when he needed a pick-me-up, and offering comfort without being asked. A week later, Chinwe felt better and decided to step outside for fresh air. She strolled down the street, noticing a florist she had often passed but never entered. She thought of buying a small bouquet for the living room. A few minutes later, she stepped back onto the sidewalk with some brightly colored blooms in a paper wrap. She allowed herself a small daydream. Wouldn't it be wonderful if Tunde ever walked into a place like this just for me? That evening, Tunde came home late and found Chinwe already asleep. On the counter, next to the newly purchased flowers, she had left him a meal with a brief note, letting him know she hoped he'd had a good day. Tunde stood there for a few moments, staring at the flowers she had bought and the warmth reflected in her handwritten words. He felt a surge of appreciation and a pang of guilt. Shortly after, Chinwe's mother paid them a visit. She admired the plant Tunde had bought for Chinwe's birthday and teased him gently about how she never used to see him as the flower type. That casual remark stuck with him. He realized that in Chinwe's family, giving flowers on special days, and even on ordinary ones, was common. It was a tradition that symbolized love, thoughtfulness, and kindness. He began to wonder what it would feel like to finally give Chinwe something she had always wanted, without expecting anything in return. A month later, Tunde set out on a mission. He left work early, driving nervously to the florist near their neighborhood. Stepping inside, he felt out of place among the rows of bright arrangements and the sweet smell of roses. But he took a deep breath and explained to the florist that he wanted a bouquet that would make someone feel truly special. The florist asked if it was for a birthday or an anniversary, and Tunde simply said, "It's for my wife, just because she loves flowers." That evening, Chinwe was preparing a simple dinner when she heard the door open. Tunde walked in, hiding something behind his back. Her eyes widened in surprise as he presented a large bouquet of fresh roses. She was so overwhelmed she could barely speak. Although she had dreamed of this moment many times, she never thought it would actually happen. The room grew still, as if the flowers themselves were holding their breath, waiting for her reaction. In her hands, the roses felt both delicate and full of promise. She thought of all the hints she had given, all the times she had tried to show Tunde what love meant to her. Finally, there they were, fragile blossoms that seemed to capture her silent wish. She set them carefully on the table, noticing Tunde's uncertain face. He appeared shy, as though he wasn't sure if he had done the right thing. Soft gratitude filled Chinwe's heart. She reached for Tunde's hand, and in that small gesture, he understood just how much it meant to her. He realized love was not about whether flowers lasted only a few days, but rather the memory and meaning they carried. In that moment, Tunde saw how one simple act could light up the person he cared for most. From that day on, everything felt lighter between them. Their conversations had a new warmth. Tunde, no longer dismissive, asked about Chinwe's interests and tried to understand why certain things made her smile. Chinwe, relieved and grateful, found that she could open her heart more easily. She, in turn, took more interest in Tunde's hobbies, learning what made him feel recognized and loved. As they grew closer, they realized their marriage was not about grand displays or expensive items. It was about noticing the details, how each partner expressed care, how each needed a certain kind of love. Chinwe continued to leave small notes for Tunde, and he continued to surprise her in new ways. Sometimes it was a single rose on her pillow. Other times it was a sweet message, taped on the mirror before she woke up. Looking back, Chinwe understood that Tunde had never seen value in flowers because he had never experienced their deeper significance. For her, these petals weren't just plants. They were symbols of affection, thoughtful gestures that spoke directly to her heart. And for Tunde, every time Chinwe did something kind without expecting anything in return, he learned that love was not always about convenience or utility. It was about understanding what mattered to the other person. Their home began to reflect this mutual care. The potted plant thrived, its bright leaves unfurling more each week. On weekends, Chinwe would place fresh flowers on the table, and Tunde would sometimes bring home smaller bouquets, carefully chosen. They still joked about the fact that he once thought flowers were pointless, but now he saw the smiles they brought to her face as irreplaceable. In the end, Chinwe's longing for flowers wasn't just about pretty things that wilt. It was about feeling noticed and loved. And Tunde's change of heart wasn't only about buying bouquets. It was about discovering that even the smallest gesture could speak volumes when it came from a place of genuine caring. Their journey taught them both that love isn't always instinctive, but it can be learned if two people are willing to meet each other halfway. With every new bloom that entered their house, they remembered how important it was to pay attention, to show kindness, and to never overlook the simple things that keep a marriage alive. In their laughter and shared moments, they found a closeness they had once only dreamed about. And in the gentle rustle of petals, they heard a promise they knew they would carry for years to come. Share your thoughts about this story in the comments section, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel for more exciting stories from the heart of Africa.